I never thought that a sudden call from my little sister, whom I had once forgotten, would be the beginning of everything I'm about to tell. It all started with a fake smile on the screen, a seemingly harmless comment, and a truth that left me so stunned, I spilled my coffee on the floor. There was a time when I thought distance would make everything easier, that leaving the US meant leaving behind the troubles, but I was wrong. Very wrong. And the truth is, family can find you, even when you're on the other side of the world. My name is Morgan, 31 years old, currently living and working in Switzerland. 3 years ago, I left California after receiving an irresistible offer from a major financial company in Europe. Great salary, professional environment, and most importantly, a chance to start over, far from the never-ending cycle called family. Before I moved, I lived in a small apartment in Pasadena. It wasn't one of those luxurious fancy places, but to me it was full of memories. It had once been my grandmother's apartment, the only woman in the family I truly respected. After she passed, she left the apartment to my mother in her will. When I graduated college and started working, my mom suggested selling it to me for a family price, $92,000. I didn't hesitate. I used my savings, borrowed a bit more, and signed the contract right during a weekend dinner at my parents' house. It wasn't because I loved the apartment so much, but because I didn't want to live with them for another minute. I needed my own space, and this was the first step to get it. After buying it, I renovated every little corner myself. The backyard was filled with lavender, and the kitchen was repainted with the olive green my grandmother loved. In the 3 years I lived there, I can honestly say I truly lived. But then the opportunity in Switzerland came, and I knew I couldn't turn it down. I signed the contract, packed up my things and moved out. The apartment was still mine, and I rented it out to a young couple to make some extra income. I left behind not just the apartment, but also the relationships I once thought were flesh and blood. The relationship between me and Lacey, my younger sister, was always cold, to the point of being suspicious. She was 7 years younger than me, and you could say we were like two completely different planets. When I was struggling in college, Lacey was still playing with dolls and crying because she couldn't have candy before dinner. When I was struggling to find a job, she was starting high school and getting involved in teenage love drama. We were never close. Since I moved out, the connection between us was reduced to a few birthday wishes, or a Merry Christmas once a year. I tried to bridge the gap, sending gifts on holidays, but I always got back either a terse thank you or complete silence. Perhaps I gradually got used to the fact that my sister was a stranger, with the same bloodline. My parents always sided with Lacey. To them she was the child who needed more attention, while I, the one who always took care of herself, was left to be. When I bought that apartment, they looked at me with a mixture of pride and relief. As if they had just lifted a heavy burden, and now they could focus all their energy on their baby. I didn't complain. The silence and distance between me and my family might not have been ideal, but at least it allowed me to live my life peacefully in Europe. No one bothered me. No one asked for anything. No one blamed me. At least until one June morning, when Lacey's name suddenly appeared on my phone screen while I was in an online meeting with a client. I don't remember the last time she called me. Maybe it was in 2020, when my grandmother passed away. Maybe it was even longer than that. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the answer button. My heart beat a little faster, not from excitement, but from a strange sense of unease creeping into every cell. I took a deep breath, pressed the button to answer, and the conversation began with a soft, overly cheerful voice. Just like the way my mom spoke whenever she was about to ask for something big. Before I could say anything, Lacey started talking non-stop, as if we were still calling each other every night to chat about everything under the sun. "Morgan, are you free? I have some good news to share." I forced a smile, leaned back in my chair, and held the phone tightly. "All right, go ahead. I just got accepted into UCLA." Her voice rang out with excitement. "And I'll be moving into your apartment next week." I thought I misheard her. "Which apartment?" I asked slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. The one in Pasadena. I've already talked to Mom and Dad. They said it's fine. You're not living there anymore, so I think it makes sense to stay there while I'm studying. It's close to campus, super convenient, and I won't have to pay rent. I went silent for a few seconds. Then, the feeling of being pierced slowly spread from the back of my neck, down my spine, like someone had just poured a bucket of cold water over me in the middle of Swiss winter. Lacey? I interrupted her, my voice sharper now. Did you just say you're moving into my apartment? Yeah, it's our parents', right? She laughed as if I were joking. I tightened my grip on the phone. No, it's not our parents. I bought that apartment from them, I paid for it, signed the contract properly. It's my house, not some free place for you to stay in. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Lacey spoke, in an annoyed tone. Why are you being so dramatic? I'm just staying there temporarily while I study. You're living on the other side of the world, and it's empty, so it's a waste. Not empty. I emphasized each word. I'm renting it out. There's a clear contract. They pay rent every month. You can't just move in, like that. Oh my God, Morgan, her voice soared. You're a CFO, six-figure income. Don't tell me you need that money. I'm starting my college life. Why are you being so stingy? I gripped the edge of the table, trying to keep my voice from breaking with anger. It's not about the money, Lacey. It's about ownership and respect. You don't have the right to just decide to live in a place that's not yours just because Mom and Dad said it's okay. But they said it's a family property. I bought it. They have no rights over that apartment anymore. Don't talk to me about family property. Lacey went silent. Maybe for the first time, she began to understand that the situation wasn't as simple as she thought. Mom and Dad? Didn't say anything to you? She asked cautiously. I scoffed. No, they didn't ask me. You're the one who called and announced it, like I'm some kind of gatekeeper. Well, I thought you wouldn't mind. You can stay somewhere else when you come back, right? I held my breath for a moment, then coldly replied. No, I'm not moving out of the apartment I paid almost $100,000 for just so you can live there for free. That's not happening, Lacey. You really are being unreasonable, Morgan. Her voice trembled, a mix of frustration and confusion. We're just trying to help you save money. I'm not responsible for helping you save money by losing my home, my income, and my respect. Without waiting for her to say anything more, I hung up. My hands were shaking as I placed the phone on the table. I tried to breathe deeply, but all I could hear in my head were her words. The blatant attitude, the disregard for my rights, and the way she used the excuse of the baby of the family needing help to impose her will on me. Just like what my parents had done all through my childhood. I was reheating pasta in the microwave when my phone rang again. The screen showed, Mom. Oh, I didn't answer. 4 more calls followed, but I let them go. But when the 5th call came in, I knew if I didn't answer they would keep bothering me. I tapped the answer button and held the phone to my ear, my heart feeling like it had thorns. Morgan? My mom's voice was sharp from the first word. Why are you overreacting like this? Why are you making things hard for your own sister just because of that empty apartment? I sneered. Empty? I'm renting it out, and that apartment isn't a family toy. I paid for it. Oh my God, Morgan, my mom almost screamed. You're living in Switzerland. What's the apartment there for? Lacey needs a place to stay. You can rent somewhere else when you come back. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? I said coldly. The issue is, you're making decisions about something that's no longer yours, then forcing your eldest daughter to sacrifice her rights for the youngest daughter, just like you've always done. Don't talk back to me like that, Morgan. I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead. If you want Lacey to have a place to stay, then you pay for her to stay there. I'm not the backup solution for every family problem. My mom exhaled sharply through the phone. Her voice grew colder, as if I were an ungrateful child. You're being very selfish, Morgan. No, I'm just protecting my property. And if you call me about this again, I'll block your number. I hung up before she could respond. In the quiet kitchen, the microwave beeped, signaling that dinner was ready. But I no longer had the stomach to eat. My stomach twisted, as if all the suppressed emotions of years were about to burst out, not just because of the apartment, but because of the entire twisted mindset that had haunted me since I was a child. They thought I didn't need to care about my property because I was rich. They thought I was the safe choice, the one who would always sacrifice. But they were wrong. So wrong. And they were about to face a truth much bigger than they thought. I thought everything was over after that phone call, but I forgot one important thing. In my family, nothing ends with just one refusal. And sure enough, just a few hours after I hung up with Lacey, my mom called back. This time, she didn't bother to keep up the fake calmness. Her voice was like a cold knife, cutting straight through my ear the moment I hit the answer button. "Morgan," she said, without a greeting. "I just talked to your sister. You're really going too far." I closed my eyes, leaned my head against the wall, feeling the exhaustion rise up to my neck. "I know you're mad. But don't take your anger out on Lacey. She's still young, just starting college. She needs support, and you have a stable life in Europe." "Stable doesn't mean I should clean up everyone else's mess," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I've made it clear, that apartment is mine. I paid for it, signed the legal documents, remember?" "Oh my God, Morgan!" My mom sighed heavily, her voice now high-pitched. "You're living halfway around the world, leaving an empty house you're not even using, and you can't let your sister stay there temporarily? She's your sister! And how about the fact that both you and Lacey decided that without asking me? You think I'm some kind of ATM that doesn't deserve respect?" "Don't talk back to me," she nearly shouted. I laughed coldly. "I'm not talking back. I'm just tired of you always assuming I have to sacrifice. When I was little, it was my toys, then my old clothes, then tuition, and now it's even the house I worked my ass off to buy. Now you want to take it because your little sister needs it. You're being selfish, Morgan. Your dad and I have already spent all our money on Lacey's college. We don't have anything left to rent her a place." I froze. That was the first time my mom specifically mentioned money. "Really?" I asked, my voice as sharp as a razor. "Where did the hundreds of thousands of dollars I paid for that apartment go? You said it was used to pay for Lacey's tuition, right?" "Yes, we're not wealthy, Morgan. Do you think your dad and I want to work ourselves to the bone at our age?" I tilted my head back and let out a bitter laugh. "Well, if that's the case, it's easy. If Lacey stays in that apartment, then you can pay me rent. I'll offer the family a special discount. A blood relative deal. $1,000 a month." Silence. An oppressive silence hung in the air. Then my mom screamed as if she had been deeply offended. "What did you just say? You're asking your own sister for rent?" "No. I'm asking for fairness." "Morgan." "Oh my God. You're living in Europe, earning a high salary, spending money you can't even use. Look at your sister. She's just starting college, hasn't even worked, knows nothing. And you? Then who forced her to live on her own in an expensive city like Los Angeles? Who made that decision?" I ground out each word. "You chose a school for her far from home, then turned around and made me responsible for her? Do you not see how ridiculous that is? You really are so disappointing, Morgan. I didn't think you'd turn into such a greedy and cold person. Always calculating money. Do you even remember what family is?" That sentence, "Do you even remember what family is?" hit the deepest scar inside me. Because I once thought family was everything. I once sacrificed my dreams, worked extra jobs, and went without clothes just to send money back to them. Then, when I was finally strong enough to stand on my own, they came back, seeing me as a warehouse of assets. Emotionless, unlimited. I clenched my teeth, speaking slowly. Family is not where people assume the one with money has to give, and the weaker one just takes. I'm not a cash machine, Mom. You'll never be forgiven if you kick your sister out like that, my mom said, her voice trembling. If you do this, you're not human anymore. Well, you can keep that curse then, I said, then hung up, before the tears could start to flow. That night I couldn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, while the rain drizzled outside. In my head, the two words my mom had labeled me with kept repeating: greedy. I was the self-sufficient daughter, never asking anyone for a penny. I bought that apartment with my own hard-earned money, and now I was being called greedy, just for not wanting to have it taken from me again. Around 2 a.m. I sat up. I opened my laptop, pulled up the lease agreement and forwarded a copy to my lawyer. In the email, I wrote, "If anyone illegally enters this apartment, including family members, I want legal action ready. This is my legal property, and I will not let anyone disrespect that anymore." I hit send with cold hands, but a lighter heart than ever before. Because now I knew one thing: if I don't stand up and protect what's mine, no one else will. I hadn't intended to call anyone. I wanted to completely cut off contact, lock all connections, and let them deal with the consequences of their impositions. But then, Aunt Sarah called. Her name appeared on the screen while I was standing by the window, holding a glass of wine, my eyes blankly staring down at the peaceful Swiss street. Aunt Sarah, my mom's sister, was the only one left in the large family I still kept in touch with. She was never loud, never intervened too much, but always listened. This time I answered because perhaps deep down I still needed someone on the side of reason. "I just talked to your mom," Aunt Sarah's voice came through after a few short pleasantries. "She's furious that you won't let Lacey stay in the apartment." I chuckled, the wine swirling in my glass. "You know why I refused. I bought that apartment. They have no rights to it." "I know. And I completely understand your decision," Aunt Sarah said slowly, clearly emphasizing every word. "But Morgan, there's one thing I want you to do. Not for your mom, not for anyone else, but for you and Lacey." I fell silent, waiting. "You two should talk again, properly. Video call, look each other in the eyes. I understand why you don't see anything wrong, but Lacey, she's been living in the shadow of your parents for too long. I think she truly doesn't know the truth." "You think she's been lied to?" I asked, half in doubt, half in sorrow. "I don't think. I know. Lacey grew up in a house where adults could twist the truth however they wanted. And you know that for sure." I sank down into the chair, deep in thought. Aunt Sarah was right. And, if I truly wanted to rid myself of this burden, at least I had to face my sister one last time. To see whether Lacey was an accomplice, or just a pawn like I used to be. That night I pressed the video call button for Lacey. She picked up immediately, her face appeared on the screen, pale, hair hastily tied up, eyes with dark circles. She didn't look like someone who had just won, nor like someone living in victory. "I didn't expect you to call back," she said, her voice hoarse. "You've stirred up a storm at home." "Right," I replied, trying to stay calm. "But today, I'm not calling to argue. I just want you to see this." I turned the camera, pointing it directly at my laptop screen. A file was already opened, a copy of the purchase agreement for the apartment, the ownership certificate, and a $95,000 transfer receipt from my personal account to my parents' account, 3 years ago. I didn't say anything. I just stayed silent, letting the numbers and legal seals speak for themselves. Lacey stared at the screen. She didn't blink, her lips slightly pressed together. Then, after a few seconds, she spoke up. "What is this?" "It's the proof that I bought the apartment from Mom," I said evenly. "They no longer own it. It's been mine for 3 years. But they said it was the house our grandparents left, that they were letting me stay there temporarily so I could work." "No, Lacey, they sold it. To me. With the money I saved up in the first 3 years after graduating. This isn't a favor, it's a transaction, very clear." She went silent. Her face grew gradually pale, as if all the blood had drained from it. There was something in her eyes that wavered. Not anger, but shock. It can't be, she whispered. They told me you left the house to go overseas, that you didn't need the apartment anymore. So they said I could just move in. I nodded slowly. Now you understand why I got so mad? I didn't know, Morgan. I really didn't know. Silence engulfed the call for a few seconds. Then suddenly she spoke, almost in a whisper. They also told me that my tuition was paid with the money from selling the apartment. That you agreed to let me stay there to make up for it. I clenched my fist. It felt like someone had just squeezed the air out of my chest. I thought, at least they wouldn't lie to you about that. Did you? Lacey looked directly at the screen. Did you say the money from the house sale was used to pay for my tuition? I nodded. Mom just said that 3 days ago. Lacey laughed. But that laugh was twisted and painful. Morgan. I'm on a full scholarship. UCLA gave me a full scholarship because of my SAT scores and extracurriculars. Mom hasn't paid a single cent. I felt the ground beneath me tremble, not because of anger, but because of the horror. Are you sure? Sure, 100%. I even emailed them to confirm. I thought Mom was just bragging too much, but now. Lacey didn't finish her sentence. Her eyes were filled with tears. We both sat in silence, an ocean apart, yet both frozen by a common discovery. We had both been deceived. I spoke softly. Do you remember the summer when you were in 7th grade? You wanted to take a dance class, but Mom said there was no money because I just asked to buy a laptop? Lacey looked up. You bought the laptop with your part-time job money? Mom lied to me? Not just that time, many times. Lacey's face changed. When I asked to go to summer camp, Mom said she just paid for your tuition. I shook my head. I applied for the scholarship for free. I didn't take a dime from them. We sat there like we had just completed a puzzle, only to realize the full picture was a long chain of elaborate lies that spanned our entire childhood. Lacey let out a soft sob. I choked up. They didn't just tear us apart, Lacey. They used us. Against each other. Lacey nodded, her eyes still glued to the screen. I need a moment to process this. I smiled weakly. So do I. But now I know one thing. You're not the enemy. The screen brightened with the yellow light of her room. That light wasn't enough to erase all the darkness between us, but it was the first spark after so many years of being lost. Lacey quickly wiped away her tears, then looked at me, her voice choked but firm. Sis. I need to tell you everything. I nodded, my heart sinking like a snapped guitar string. Deep down, I had a vague idea, but now, I was about to hear it in my sister's own words. And the truth had never been easy to hear. Since I applied to college, Lacey began, I told Mom I wanted to work hard on my own so I wouldn't be a burden. I studied like crazy, joined social activities, did everything to earn a scholarship. And you did, I added softly, smiling faintly. Yeah. She nodded, her eyes red. Full ride. Tuition, dorm, books, even food. Everything. But Mom still told everyone that she and Dad were struggling to support me, so there was nothing left to help you. I felt my throat tighten. A chill spread down my spine. I've heard that line too, I said. When I applied for college, Mom said there was no money because she had just bought new clothes for you for your first day of school. Lacey stared at me in shock. I went to public school wearing cheap t-shirts and jeans. I still remember clearly, Mom said. We don't have money for a dress because Morgan just asked for money to buy a laptop for college. I closed my eyes. Oh God. I worked all summer that year to buy that used laptop from Craigslist. We sat in silence. But this time, it wasn't because of awkwardness. It was because the full picture had started to emerge. Every memory piece fitting together. Revealing a web of lies that had existed throughout our childhood. Do you remember the summer you were denied from going to summer camp? I asked. They said they had just paid for my SAT prep course, so there was no extra money. Lacey let out a dry laugh. I remember. I was mad at you the whole summer. But now that I hear you, did you ever go to a prep class? Absolutely not. I studied with library books and free videos, because Mom said, don't waste money on those things, self-study is what matters. And Lacey lowered her head. When you moved to Switzerland, Mom said you left because you didn't want to support me anymore, that you thought I was a hassle. My heart felt like it was punched. What? Yeah. I believed that. Then, when I asked about the apartment, Mom said, it's family property, your sister has a stable life now, it's your turn to enjoy a little. I gasped, not believing my ears. They've torn us apart by building a wall between us with lies. Lacey nodded, her eyes darkening. I thought you had abandoned me, that you were selfish. And you thought I was the spoiled one, getting everything. But turns out, we were both just puppets in their play. I clenched my fists, wondering how many times I had wrongly blamed my sister just because of something my parents had said. And the tuition, I said. I once asked why I couldn't get help for college. Mom said, your sister is smart, she can get a scholarship on her own, but I have to take care of every penny for you. Lacey choked up. When I asked to join the school dance team, Mom said there was no money because she just bought a plane ticket for you to go to Geneva. That ticket was fully paid by the company. I didn't ask anyone for a penny. We both sat motionless. No need to say more. It was all clear. Their tactic was simple but cruel. Whenever one of us needed something, they would blame the other, planting jealousy, guilt, and insecurity in our minds. They did this so no one would dare ask for anything, question anything, and no one would realize where the money was actually going. Did you ever wonder, Lacey said, her voice softening, about the designer clothes Mom wears, the times they said they went on a business trip but came back with tans? I thought they were really working hard. I swallowed. I suspected. But they always had an excuse, always a justification. I thought I was just imagining things. I thought if I spoke up, I'd be called ungrateful. Me too. I sighed. I didn't expect it. For all these years I've tried to be independent, and so have you. While they lived as if they had no burdens at all. And we lived with the obsession that we were a burden to them. That sentence sent a chill down my spine. Suddenly I remembered a series of small details. The times Mom bought so many things to fill the trunk but called it promotions. Dad often complained, your mom spends too much, when she wasn't around. Those trips to Florida for company conferences. But the pictures on Facebook were of a 5-star resort and seafood dinners. Lacey, I said, my voice quiet but firm. We need to know more. It's not just a feeling, we need the truth. She looked up, her eyes lighting up with a determination I'd never seen in her before. I agree. It's time to lift the veil. I smiled faintly. A strange feeling stirred within me. Not hatred, but a desire to reclaim something. The truth, fairness, and the bond between us that they had tried to destroy. And for the first time in years, I no longer felt alone. The next morning I called Aunt Sarah. I needed confirmation. I needed to know that the pieces we had put together last night weren't just assumptions. Lacey and I had been pushed into two opposing worlds, fed twisted stories, and I knew there was only one person in the family who could reveal the truth. Aunt Sarah picked up after 3 rings. Her voice was still low and soothing as always, but I could hear the anxiety in her breath from the first word. Morgan, what's going on? Why are you calling so early? I didn't beat around the bush. Aunt, Lacey and I talked. We know we've been lied to. We know our parents have been lying for years, but I need you to confirm something. A brief silence, then Aunt Sarah spoke gently. Go ahead, dear. I took a deep breath. Did Grandma send money every month for me and Lacey? On the other end was such heavy silence I thought the call had dropped, but then Aunt Sarah sighed, slowly, as if releasing a burden she had carried for far too long. Yes, she said softly. And it wasn't just monthly payments, Morgan. She also left a separate amount in her will. a significant amount. For both you and Lacey's college education. My throat tightened. But… They always said there was nothing. Always said I had to take care of myself. They said they never received a penny from Grandma. Aunt Sarah laughed bitterly. Because they didn't want you to know. Your grandma loved both of you dearly. When you were little, every month she sent your mom $2,000, with the note, to support Morgan and Lacey. I saw those envelopes. Every month, for nearly 10 years. I bit my lip, trying to hold back the surge of anger rising inside me. Do you know what they did with that money? I know, Aunt Sarah replied, her voice pained. They spent it all on themselves. Your mom bought designer clothes, your dad changed cars like changing shirts, and you too, you ate discounted food and wore hand-me-downs. I had arguments with your mom about this. The result? She cut off contact with me for almost 4 years. I gritted my teeth. What about the college fund? Grandma left that in her will, Aunt Sarah said, enunciating clearly. $80,000 for each of you. She gave full control to your mom, with the condition that it be used for its intended purpose. I nearly dropped my phone. $80,000 for each of us? That's right. Grandma wanted to make sure you two got a proper education, but your mom, told the lawyer she would set up a savings account for both of you. No one checked. She passed away right after that. I stood up, pacing the room. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. So, they took everything? I whispered. Aunt Sarah paused. I can't be sure, but… You saw them go to Florida 4 times that year, right? All business trips? I slumped into the chair, my eyes wide open, as if I had just realized something that reason had been denying for all these years. We thought they were trying. We saw them cutting coupons, buying things from cheap stores. But it turns out, it was all just an act? Yes, Aunt Sarah said, her voice hoarse. A performance, so you wouldn't ask, wouldn't demand, and most importantly, wouldn't suspect. I couldn't say anything else. I just heard the sound of blood pounding in my ears. It felt like all my memories, all the morals I had been taught, had been stripped away. They didn't just lie. They manipulated. They played the victim to force 2 children into a state of guilt and invisible debt. Morgan… Aunt Sarah hesitated. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner, but back then, I was scared. I closed my eyes. I couldn't blame her. They knew how to control people. Even adults couldn't escape, let alone children. Did you keep any documents? I asked, my eyes lighting up with a faint glimmer of hope. I have a copy of the original will, Aunt Sarah said. I asked the lawyer to send it to me, because I didn't trust your parents. I still have it. If you need, I'm ready to give it to you. I sat up straight. Aunt, I need that document. And? I think it's time to face them. What are you planning to do? I clenched my fists. I'm not sure. But this time, I won't stay silent anymore. I sent Lacey the recording of the call with Aunt Sarah. She texted back with just one word: shocked. Half an hour later, Lacey called back. She spoke, as if she couldn't believe it. I just dug up some old papers from the drawer. There are a few pictures of Mom standing in front of a hotel in Hawaii. I thought they were photoshopped from back then, but now I'm sure. It's the vacation she said was a business conference in Texas. I laughed, a bitter laugh. And I just remembered, they told me they didn't have money to buy my prom dress, so I had to borrow one from a friend. Then Mom bragged to the neighbors that she bought a Coach bag for Dad's birthday. Lacey went silent. Then she whispered, they didn't just take the money. They took our youth's… I didn't answer, because I knew she was right. They stole our trust. They stole our childhood. And if I didn't do something, maybe they'd keep doing it to someone else. 2 days later I flew back to California. The 11-hour flight felt like a lifetime. I barely slept. All I could think of was the image of my parents calmly sitting in their luxurious home, drinking tea, lying as easily as breathing, while Lacey and I fought for every scholarship, every discount item, every chance to live decently. Lacey picked me up at the airport. She didn't say much, just hugged me tightly, then drove me straight to my parents' house. We hadn't made plans, we hadn't notified them. No warnings. They didn't deserve the chance to prepare any excuses. Dad's silver SUV was still parked in the driveway. The grass was neatly trimmed. The front looked as spotless as it did in a home decor magazine. They didn't live in the poverty they had preached about for all these years. Mom opened the door. She froze when she saw Lacey and me standing there, side by side. No welcoming smile. No welcome home, sweetie, like you see on TV. Just a wary glance and her lips pressed tight in defense. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice low. "We need to talk," I said, walking straight into the house, not waiting for an invitation. Dad was sitting in his office, flipping through a newspaper. He looked up, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, look who's here," he said. "Morgan's home for a visit?" I didn't answer. I placed the bag down on the couch, pulling out a folder from my backpack, with documents already printed. Papers from the lawyer, a copy of Grandma's will, bank transfer statements, and proof of the apartment transfer. I looked straight at the two people I once called parents. No avoidance, no hesitation. "We know everything now," I began. "About the money Grandma sent, about the tuition Mom said she used for Lacey, about the apartment Mom said was still family property." The room was completely silent. Lacey stood beside me, both hands clenched tightly, her eyes bright with intensity. "And about the $80,000 Grandma left for each of us for our college education," she said. "Money that we've never seen a single cent of." Dad looked at Mom. Mom smirked. The kind of cold smirk I used to think was power, now it just seemed shameless. "You two came here just to make a scene over that?" she sneered. "Listen, that was money Grandma left for us to manage. She trusted us, and how we spend it is our business." I clenched my fists until my knuckles turned white. "Grandma made it clear in her will that it was for our tuition, not for you two to go to Hawaii, buy Louis Vuitton bags, or change cars like changing clothes." "We have the right to live comfortably too," Dad spoke up, his eyes unwavering. "You two got an education, were raised, not left hungry, and didn't have to live on the streets like homeless people. That should be enough." I froze. "Did you just say, enough?" "Yeah," he replied. "You weren't abused, you weren't beaten, you had a place to sleep, food to eat. We're not a perfect family, but no one has the right to judge us." I laughed bitterly, a laugh full of resentment. "No one's judging. But we were manipulated, lied to. For years, we lived with guilt, with jealousy, thinking the other was favored. While you two made all of it up. Every lie. Every penny embezzled. Every blaming look." Lacey trembled. "I hated you. I thought you were selfish, only caring about yourself. But it turns out, I was the one being used so you'd feel useless." Mom crossed her arms, her face icy cold. "You're talking like we're criminals, but really, you're just throwing a tantrum because you didn't get pampered." "No," I said, my voice firm. "We're awake, for the first time in our lives, and we're not here to beg or ask for money. We're here to say, it ends here." Dad let out a dry laugh. "Oh, is that so? The good little girls have become rebels now? Think you're grown-ups?" I stood up, my gaze locked on him. "I don't need your approval to be an adult. I've been one without a penny from you. And now, I'm old enough to know. Some relationships should be let go." Lacey pulled out an envelope from her bag. Inside was a copy of the will and a scholarship account statement. She placed it on the table. "So that later, if anyone asks, you won't be able to say you didn't know." Mom looked at us, for the first time showing signs of unease. "Where are you two going?" I smiled faintly. "Anywhere, as long as it's not here, with people like you." I took Lacey's hand and we walked out of the house. The house that once symbolized family, now just a cold wall of lies. No one followed. No one tried to stop us. Only the sound of the door closing behind us and a feeling. of freedom. Sharp as pain. But I knew, we had just done the right thing in our lives. 6 months after Lacey and I left that house, everything changed. Not in some miraculous way, not in the everything's fine sort of way, but enough for us to breathe again, using our own lungs, no longer inhaling the lies in that toxic air. I'm still living in Switzerland, continuing my high-paced job, but my mind is much lighter. The apartment in Pasadena, that once was the battleground, now has new tenants with a clear lease agreement. I cleaned it out with my own hands on a trip back to the US, as if wiping away all traces of the years I'd been exploited. As for Lacey, she's still in California, but no longer in the shadow of our parents. I helped her rent a small apartment just a few blocks from UCLA. Not fancy, no ocean view or swimming pool, but it gets morning sunlight, has a cute kitchen nook, and a balcony big enough for 2 pots of mint. She said it was the first time she'd felt like she had a home without feeling controlled. I paid the rent for the first 6 months. Lacey protested fiercely. "I don't want to be a burden to you," she said, her face flushed. I smiled. "You're not a burden. You're being helped. As someone who deserves to be loved. It's very different." In the end she agreed, but only with one condition. "You give me 6 months. After that, I'll take care of myself." And she did. She got a job at a coffee shop near school, working the morning shift starting at 6 a.m. to make it to class at 8. I once asked her why she didn't choose an easier job. Lacey just shrugged, flipping through her textbooks. "I want to build my own life, not owe anyone anything." I understood that feeling, deeply, because I had once stood at that same starting point. The place where you know you have to tear down all the old foundations and rebuild from scratch, even if it means carrying every brick yourself. We talked almost every day, no longer the terse, happy birthday or Merry Christmas messages, but long calls, talking about class, roommates, the new coffee at the cafe, or the movie she was watching. I can't count how many times we laughed like crazy over some silly memory. Things that had been buried under years of anger and misunderstandings planted by our parents. One fall evening, when I returned to California to check on the apartment and visit her, the two of us sat on the floor, eating takeout pizza, watching a movie on her old laptop. Lacey looked at me, her eyes sparkling under the yellow light, and whispered, "I never thought we'd be like this." I looked up, "Like what?" "Peaceful," she answered. "And real." I nodded. Didn't say anything more. Just felt something melt inside my chest. Not pain, but something close to healing. Our parents no longer contacted us. After that confrontation, they sent a few long-winded messages that I couldn't be bothered to read, just attempts to justify themselves, to turn the blame back on us. I didn't reply. Neither did Lacey. We didn't need them anymore. Not because of hatred, but because we had enough to know forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone to hurt you again. Instead, Lacey and I started fresh. No strings attached. No lies. Every month I send her a small amount for her school supplies. She accepts, but always sends back the receipt. One time, I teased her. "Do you trust me so much that you're sending back receipts, or are you worried I'll think you're spending the money on designer bags like someone else?" She laughed out loud, tears streaming down her face. "No, Morgan, I send it because I want you to know I'm not like them." That was when I realized the most valuable thing we gained wasn't the money, the apartment, or the scholarship. It was trust. The trust that, after everything, after betrayal, after all the misunderstandings, 2 kids who grew up under the same roof but always felt alone, finally found each other. And in that ruin, we built something stronger than any family bond. A real sisterhood, built on truth, pain, and the determination to never let the past repeat itself. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know where Lacey will choose to live, what she will do, or who she will love. But I know, no matter what happens, we've already survived something not everyone can survive. Betrayal, from the very people who called themselves parents. And if you ever thought that brokenness only leaves behind ruins, then I'll tell you, you're wrong. Sometimes, brokenness is the only place where you can find what truly belongs to you. Morgan and Lacey's story is a powerful reminder that not everyone who calls themselves family deserves our absolute trust. The truth is often buried under the guise of false sacrifice and conditional love, but when we dare to face it, we can reclaim our freedom and our worth. Sometimes, the greatest loss opens the door to real connections, built not by blood, but by mutual understanding and respect. What do you think about Morgan and Lacey's journey? Do you sympathize with their decision? Or do you have a different perspective? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more interesting stories about family life in the upcoming episodes.